in Ronda the Honda, but has taken trips himself in Ronda the Honda. So Jordan, I'm going to let you share what's your favorite Ronda the Honda road trip memory or favorite idiosyncrasy about this 2004 Honda Odyssey minivan.
You bet. So we a couple years ago for Salt Company, we went on a road trip to Tennessee. So I have driven Rhonda to Tennessee. And I forget if I was driving or if somebody else was, but we took Rhonda up a mountain in Tennessee, and she struggled a little bit. We were kind of on some back roads, and it was two really nice 15-passenger vans, and then Rhonda. So a lot of the students weren't too hyped to be in Ronda, but I tried to explain to them the glory that is Ronda the Honda. So probably driving that thing up a mountain is one of my favorite memories. And also, for the record, Drew at one point told me that if our lives got into the correct phases, he would straight up trade me Ronda for my 2001 Honda Accord. Every time I brought it up since, he seemed to back out of that a little bit. So I'm just like putting it on record publicly. I'm still might own that thing one day.
I will not own that publicly, that I ever said that. I just won't. I'm simply not going to put that on record. I'm just going to deny that conversation ever took place, especially considering this whole podcast is now kind of based around me being in Ronda the Honda. But I could just, it seems like almost foolish to say this. I could rename your car. If in the event that I did say that, I could rename your car Ronda the Honda and just act like the trade never took place.
Just don't acknowledge it at all. You just show up in it, have me back on, I'll be in Ronda. It'll have a different name. We won't acknowledge it.
Yeah. So, okay, Jordan, we had a bonfire the other night at my house and just had a great conversation. And one of the goals of this conversation is just to recreate that conversation, which you said might be a little bit challenging, but we're just on a road trip together. So it's all good. You're just as comfortable in front of our viewing audience as you were with me right now. And so one of the things that you talked about was just the joy of being a dad. So will you just share with us what you love about being a dad? How old is your son, Graham? What's the season of life? What's your heart doing during this time as you're experiencing the joy of just getting lots of time with him?
Dude, it's so fun. I mean, it's like, it's awful sometimes, but it's fun the majority of the time. Graham's 17 months old. He's our first kid. And I mean, coming into it, we were pretty nervous and just like, I mean, excited, but also we had heard some of the horror stories of parenting and just weren't sure what to expect. And you even have this, like, this is a live human being that I don't want to screw up. And so there was real fear, and obviously there's still some of that, but gosh, it's just so fun. So like, all right, so like I go in every morning to get Graham. I go in this morning, and you know, I have mornings where I start reading my Bible and I'm trying to be with Jesus, and I get distracted. I get in front of myself and I'm like already getting stressed for the day or whatever. I go in to get Graham. I walk in and the dude is standing in his crib, jumping up and down, so hyped, right? And so get him out. We always go over to the window in his room because the first thing he wants to do is look outside. And so I like open up the blinds, and he like leans on my shoulder, stares outside, and then just starts laughing and looks at me if I don't laugh back at him. Like, are you seeing this? Like, this is so fun. Like, why don't you think this is hilarious? And so I just laugh at him, and we just sit there and laugh. And it's like, all this stuff that, I don't know, that weighs me down or that I get distracted by, I hang out with that little dude, and it's just, it doesn't matter. Like, it just all seems dumb. And he just like knows how to enjoy life. And I want to live hard like that little kid does. So dude, it's been so fun.
Dude, that reminded me of Psalm 19. You know, the heavens declare the glory of God and the sky proclaims his handiwork. And it's so cool being able to see. I experienced that same thing, seeing the world through a kid's eyes is such a beautiful reality. But it reminded me of that psalm, and reminded me of just a continual conversation that we've been having since COVID started, as we've both been kind of starting with the Psalm of the day.
Mhm.
So today's the 21st, Psalm 21, yesterday, Psalm 20, the day before that, Psalm 19, and then kind of skipping ahead. Maybe it's 30 Psalms or 20 Psalms or 50 Psalms, and kind of reading the Psalms with that number at the back of them. What's been the effect of that discipline on your own soul?
Yeah. Man, I feel like I'm learning how to integrate. I'm learning how to have a conversation with God. So like I'm trying to figure out how to explain that, but like I wake up and I read the Psalms and I'm trying to just go really slow through them. And so I'm reflecting on them one verse at a time. And it's like it's sparking something in me. So I'm seeing all over the Psalms, it talks about how God is our refuge and strength. And so it's like I'll read that and it kind of just stops me in my tracks. And it's like, all right, what does that mean that God is my refuge? And I feel like it naturally just becomes, it goes from a question in my head and I go from meditation into prayer really naturally. And it's just, it feels like this conversation with God where he's talking to me through his word, and then it's doing something in me and I'm talking back to him, and I'm talking through his word, and then he's answering me through his word. And so I think I used to be pretty like almost rigid in my time with God, in the sense of like, all right, this is my Bible reading time, so I'm going to read the Bible. Now I'm going to pray. Then I'm going to try and memorize scripture or meditate, which was fine. But it's becoming more integrated through the Psalms, where I feel like I'm actually encountering God and like spending time with him instead of just doing this thing. Like this Christian concept of a quiet time has transformed into this conversation that I've had with him. And I'm just and this is a combination of Ecclesiastes that we'll probably get into too, but I feel like I'm learning how to actually enjoy my life, which
Hmm.
has been something that's been really hard for me, which is a weird thing to say, but I think yeah, it's been hard for me traditionally to live in the moment. Like I've always been living in the future and trying to create my life and form my life into what it should be or who I should be. And then I'm reading the Psalms and I'm seeing that living in God's presence is fullness of joy and his right hand are pleasures forevermore. And it's like this right here, me just being with Jesus, is what I was made for, and where I find contentment. And I knew that before, but it's doing something fresh in me. And it reminds me of Graham, or Graham reminds me of that, actually, of that dude knows how to live in the present and enjoy life, which is wisdom. Like I'm just learning that like that is a godly characteristic, and he, by God's grace, in God's image, is wiser than I am in a lot of ways in life, and knows how to, he knows how to live life the way that we were designed to live life. And I feel like I'm just learning that. But what about you, man? Because we've talked about it a lot, and we've been walking through a lot of the same stuff in the Psalms.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of our elders, Terry Langland, kind of introduced us to this concept. And something that he said at a men's time that just resonated with me was that the Psalms often will map onto your life. And so my practice has been start with the Psalm of the day and then read until a psalm maps onto my life and sort of my emotional experience. And then sometimes I write the psalm down in its entirety. Sometimes I find myself on my knees praying the psalm, but I feel like it's helping me to understand the inner workings of my emotions and to actually sort of pre-reflectively give those back to God. And so I found myself, before I was reading the Psalms, often reading the Bible and actually being in a more emotionally complicated place than I was before. And I think the Psalms are helping me give word to what it looks like to be a doubting, sad, frustrated, angry human being. And yeah, and that in combination with spending the lion's share of my time in Ecclesiastes, which you mentioned, has been an interesting combo. Can you just talk through both listening to Ecclesiastes preached, preaching Ecclesiastes, reading and studying Ecclesiastes? What's the effect that that's had on your soul specifically?
Yeah. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but I like didn't love Ecclesiastes before. and and guys, Drew came to me and was like, "We're gonna teach Ecclesiastes." And I was like, "Yeah." And internally I'm like, "No, like I don't want to do that because I just don't." It's a weird book, and I don't think I've understood it well before. And at first glance, it feels really depressing. And I was just like, the world feels depressing enough right now. I don't want to be more depressed. But as I've gotten into it, it's had the opposite effect. I think as I've heard you preach it, dude, the thing that's hit me is you laughingly teach about the meaninglessness of life, and it's so refreshing. You you're pointing out what Ecclesiastes is pointing out, that nothing in this world satisfies. And we all know that in theory, but I don't know if any of us actually believe that. I don't, because I wake up every day and am trying to make stuff in this life satisfy my soul, and I'm frustrated when it doesn't, and I'm mad at life, and I'm mad at me, and I'm mad at God when it doesn't. But there's something about accepting that as the reality and just knowing like that's the state that we live in, that I feel so freed up by. And it's kind of connected to the thing that's hit me the most was from Ecclesiastes 3, where it talks about there's a time for everything. And then he says that he's written eternity in man's hearts, but hasn't given us the ability to understand eternity. So it's like we've got this desire for something more, but we can't actually comprehend the whole thing. And so the conclusion of Ecclesiastes is, instead of trying to figure out the world and try to manipulate it into what you want it to be, instead you accept literally anything that happens in your life as gift, and you do your best to just simply enjoy it. And I think I've spent my entire life doing the opposite of that. Like, I've spent my whole life, like I'm an achiever, I'm a performer, like self-help, and I think I've spent my life like looking forward and saying, this is the person I want to become, and this is the life that I want to have, and so I'm going to create that. And God is just wrecking me with, yeah, I actually have no power to do that, and I'm not in control of my own life. And I feel so freed up by that, because I'm just off of like the grind and the treadmill of trying to be something that I'm not, or have life circumstances that I don't. And I'm trying to figure out how to just, today's a gift, so I'm going to accept it. And yeah, even not analyze my feelings about it that much. But it doesn't matter that much how I feel about my life. I'm going to accept it as gift and live in the moment.
So what are some of the little things that you would have missed before that you're really just thankful for? Like, I think that's one of the effects it's had on both of our souls, is just being able to be like, man, this thing that's right in front of me has been so awesome. I mean, I just, maybe before, for me as an example, like I would pull up to my house in my car and I would just kind of look at the house and be like, man, I kind of wish this was different, or this was different about my house. And I think Ecclesiastes has made me just be like, what a gift, a house. I have a house. This is great. Thank you, God, for this house, and just to enjoy it. How about for you? What have been some things you've been forced to thank God for?
Yeah, I haven't figured out that one yet. I'm still in a perpetual fight with my yard and my house. I'm trying, but uh, dude, okay, so I am one of the least observant people in the world. I just don't pay attention to stuff. I'm just floating around in my own head. And so I literally have never paid attention in the spring. Like, and I just traditionally in my life have not been a walker. Like I just going on walks, I just hate it. And I'm just like, why do people do this? But I've been forced into a walker with COVID. And so we've been walking around my neighborhood and I've watched the world come to life. And I'm genuinely stunned. And I'm like kind of having this reaction, and I walk around with Jessamy and I'm like, do you see that tree? Like it's blooming. And she's like, yeah, I mean, she's like, I feel like the rest of the world has known about this and I'm discovering it for the first time. And so there's this little pond within walking distance of my house that is one of my favorite places in the world right now. It which I know is kind of dumb, but it also helps me enjoy my life because I don't have to have like such high standards of what's fun for me. And I feel like I'm learning how to stand by a little pond and look at a duck and worship Jesus. And the other day we had a prayer walk as a staff where, well, we like virtually. So Zoom call, prayer walk. And before we left for it, I was thinking I should probably go somewhere cool. Like I should have gone to like a state park and walked around. And I had some time where I could have gone somewhere and I was like, I just want to walk the route by my house that I walk every day because I love it. And I like seeing the progression of things coming to life. And yeah, so these little things, I mean, it reminds me of Psalm 19 too, of the heavens declare the glory of God. God's shouting out to us about his existence through his world. And I'm seeing it in ways that I haven't before.
Yeah. Yeah. I've shared with you that my prayer through Ecclesiastes is that God would give me a blue collar heart. And something we were talking about around the fire is I was just reflecting on my family's heritage and how my grandpa lived in the same couple square miles for his entire life, with the exception of a couple months or a few years away from that place. And I'm just like, man, there's just something about being content with where you are and not always thinking about the next vacation or the next trip that's so refreshing, isn't it? Just to be okay sitting in your backyard at a bonfire or jumping on the trampoline with your kids or having dinner with your wife, that I think Ecclesiastes has pushed us into. How do you think turning 30 has contributed to all this too? I feel like, those ages, it's like you're not in your 20s anymore, you just recently turned 30. How does that factor into the mix as well?
Okay, I gotta throw one back at you though, because I wanted to hear you clarify.
Okay.
What do you mean by the blue collar? Like that you want to be more blue collar, and where did you get that from Ecclesiastes? Because I've been thinking about that since you said that, and I love it, and I don't get it yet.
Well, it's something actually Zach Eswine said a few weeks back on the podcast, and he was just talking about how blue collar people understand Ecclesiastes intuitively more than white collar people, because when you're white collar, you have upward mobility. And so you always have something else that you're trying to achieve, or the next house or the next job or growth of your company or whatever it is. But when you're blue collar, you learn to be content with the little things because you're not going anywhere. You're going to live in the same town. You're going to have your dog and your truck, and you're just going to be thankful for those things. And I just want to have that kind of heart where, yes, I have big dreams. I want to do great things to make Jesus famous in the world. Want to use all the talents that he's given me, but I don't want to miss the little things along the way. I don't want to miss being able to say thank you for my life. in that. I think that's what I mean. Yeah. Okay, so you're 30. You got to talk about that now.
I'm 30. Yeah, man, it's weird, dude. Yeah. So I've talked about this before, but growing up, I was just like a dreamer, and I had a ton of conversations with my friends about how lame old people were, which I think in my head 30 was the cutoff, which is hilarious. Um in and we would have these conversations about how we're not gonna like settle down and get in a routine, and like this friend's gonna be a writer and we're gonna do this. And I think when I started the conversations, I still thought I was gonna be on the PGA tour. And it was super arrogant. And I think there's like remnants of that, or there has been remnants of that idea in me of like, I need to live this extraordinary life. And I have this urge to not waste my life, which I think is godly, but my sin twists it into something that is really just sinful, which is this kind of vainglory pride thing. And so how that relates to me turning 30 is I feel like I've been learning that the simple life that I have that is not epic, is not significant in a lot of the ways that I would have dreamed of, is so much better. Like I love my life, and it's hard, and I still go through bouts of anxiety, even at times depression and stuff like that. But on the whole, my family is like, just simply being with my family is one of the best things about my life. And I love my simple little house and my friends. And I think I think I'm happier and more content in who God is and who he made me to be and what he made my life to be, as I've learned to accept that and am learning to accept that, than when I was striving, like trying to be something else, trying to create something of my life. It wasn't fun. And I think I always thought like, I'm going to get there and then it'll be fun, whatever there is. But I've just learned along the way, there is no there. Like however far you get in your life, you always just want the next thing. And so I think I'm learning to just be thankful for and embrace simplicity a little bit, and see the difference between godly ambition and selfish drive. And I'm still in the middle of that. I think I still don't know the difference a lot of the time, but I'm starting to learn that.
Yeah. How does COVID impact what God is doing in you? And specifically, we've talked about how it impacts the way we think about ministry and Salt City. Can you give people the Humpty Dumpty illustration that's been so helpful to both of us, and just how you're thinking about that right now?
Yeah, so this was a Jeff Dodge original, or at least I heard it from Jeff on Jeff is a pastor at Veritas Church, and on their podcast several weeks ago, he was talking about how there's this specific fault that he sees happening, especially with pastors and people in ministry, or to some degree churches right now, where it's like COVID came along and it rocked and changed everything that we know about life and about ministry. And so the Humpty Dumpty thing is, it's like our Humpty Dumpty, our collective Humpty Dumpty of ministry and the idolatry of like success in ministry got knocked off of a wall and it shattered. And he was saying most of our instincts is going to be to run around picking up the pieces and to try and glue them back together and put it back in its place. And he's like, you can't put it back together again. And I was cooking food, and it stopped me in my tracks, because I felt like the Spirit of God was just saying, this is you. Like, you are still trying to get back to life as normal. And you're still trying to create identity in ministry. And so even though we're still trying to plan and do good things for our church or whatever, I think for both of us, there's just been the sense of God stopped the world. And me running around and acting like the world is still moving and like I can still do all the traditional things that I did is just, I mean, not only is it dumb, it's sin. It's a temptation to try to control the world instead of accept the one that God's controlling. And I think it's exposed in me that there's lots of ways that I've taken things that are about Jesus in ministry, stuff like preaching or the number of people coming to Christ or how many baptisms we have or the number of people coming to our church. And I've made those things about me in some ways. Like I've tried to use them as a justification for my existence or my skill set that, I'm good at this or I can do this. And God is forcing me to sit in the slowness and the inability to do a lot of the things that I would traditionally do. And he's not letting me out of it. I think he's just saying, sit here and be with me and wait for me to put the world back together. And I think my greatest fear right now, and one of the things I'm praying about, is I don't want to go back to normal. And I don't want I don't want to be the same person coming out of this. I don't want our church to be the same coming out of this. And so there's parts of me that actually don't want to leave COVID because it's doing really good things in my soul.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think something that it's made both of us focused on is just the next relationship. I mean, we all feel this need to be connected to each other and to reconcile relationships and to show kindness, because we all are in this together, even though we're in this together 6 feet apart, and we've got to care for each other in a way. And so it just seems so inappropriate and sinful to treat the church like a stepping stone in any way for some kind of self-actualization or success. And that's been exposed in us. And I'm super thankful for that too, because I think it's just softening our hearts and bringing us to Jesus, which is where we ultimately want to be. So it's been fun to wrestle through that with you, Jordan. And I think that's a good place to stop and take the hard turn into the last 3 questions that I ask everybody. So here you go. The first of those 3 questions is, if you could add one person to your home right now that you don't have to social distance with, who would it be and why, from history?
I think it's C.S. Lewis. Which I don't know if Jessamy would love that answer to that question, because I would probably just sit on my deck and talk to C.S. Lewis, and Jessamy would probably be like, can you guys do something practical with your lives and help me? But it's, you asked me, so I'm answering. But yeah, to wake up and just be like, C.S. Lewis, tell me about heaven. That'd be so fun. Or like, tell me about one of your imaginary worlds that you've created and tell me a story.
It'd be it'd be so fun also just be like, just tell me about Narnia.
Yeah. He like built an entire world and universe in his head as a kid. And there's a lot more to Narnia than just what he wrote in those books. So I want to hear about Narnia. And like sit Graham on his lap and have him tell Graham a story. That'd be so fun.
Totally. That's amazing. All right. If you had to eat one food or one meal for the rest of COVID, what would it be and why?
Okay, so I'm going hypothetical on this. So in my hypothetical world, I won't die or feel disgusting from the food that I eat.
Totally. Fair enough.
So I've been nerding out on like fine dining stuff and French cooking. I've been like watching a lot of videos and reading books about fine dining. So I really want to eat like foie gras and truffles, which truffles, not like the chocolate, but the like stupid expensive mushrooms. So I just want to eat fancy French food. But if it was like real life and I have to eat something that's not going to kill me, I've been doing like grilled vegetable piles essentially. Like I grill like a cauliflower
Nice.
with like onions and peppers and stuff, and then like a balsamic reduction over the top, and that's been fun.
You're the right guy to ask that question too, because you have a passion and a love for food that is nearly unsurpassed. So thanks for bringing us into that world there for a second, Jordan. That was great.
I think
And
about
then
things like that regularly. So
you do, and I do too now, and it's really enjoyable to think about. Okay, and the last one is, what's one sporting event, concert, or restaurant that you would go to if you could pause COVID for 4 hours? And so I wanted to share my answer before you share yours on this one, because I answered one of these questions, but mine would be Game 7 NBA Finals, Lakers versus the Bucks this year.
ooh,
And the Lakers are going to win. LeBron James is going to hit a game-winning shot. And basically one entire side, all of the courtside seats are filled with my best friends who love the NBA. So if you're a best friend listening to this and you love the NBA, or a friend, that's what it would be. And we would just be cheering, going nuts, no social distancing, and it would be a dream. So.
dude, you painting up, like painting your face, and
Oh yeah, man. I mean, it's all out, and it's, I'm after the game-winning shot, LeBron James is chest bumping me, and it's
you're charging the court. I can just picture you running on the court, getting chest bumping LeBron James, and then getting tackled.
and then getting arrested.
Yeah, arrested. For sure.
Getting on Sports Center. Yep, exactly.
I think you just publicly admitted that you're a LeBron James fan, which is kind of a bold move.
Yeah, I did. First, he was the first player in the NBA my age.
Yeah.
So
I
we're both
am too. So I'm coming on board with you, man.
we're both 35-year-old super athletic athletes and basketball players. So that's what we have in common.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your answer, man?
Oh, we gotta end. Drew's got a mad jump shot though, guys. The dude just drains threes. It's annoying. Okay, what am I answering? Oh, the Olympics. I would want to go to the Olympics with. I mean, there's lots of people, but I'm thinking my friends Dave and Steffi Livingston and the Kolopecs, Nathan and Elena would be fun. And I think they were going to be in Japan. Is that right? I think they were going to be in Japan. Okay. Because it's a dual thing, because then I can travel too, and I'm going to go to restaurants while I'm in Japan, and I've been really wanting to travel. So it's kind of about the Olympics and kind of about the travel.
Is there a specific event that you would want to see?
Not necessarily. I think it'd be fun to like bounce around. I think the fact that there's so many events would be pretty fun. But I actually really love gymnastics. I think that would actually be pretty cool to watch.
Nice. Awesome. Jordan, thanks so much for joining me, man. And your friendship and your partnership in ministry are such a gift to me. So fun to have this conversation with you. You mind praying for us, and then we'll close out, man?
Yeah, for sure. Father, I want to pray for what we were talking about. I don't want to go back to normal. And I don't want to go back to my old sin patterns and dependence on self and desire to be in control. God, I pray what you're stirring in me and in Drew by your Spirit would stay and would be a consistent staple of our lives. And God, pray that it would be a staple of Salt City Church, that we would be people who know how to live in the moment with you and aren't trying to manipulate the world into what we want it to be, but are just believing and enjoying the world that you've given us. And God, we pray for renewal and revival. Would you change our church? Would you change our city? Would you change our country? Would you change our world as a result of COVID? Would you wake up your church and teach us all what it means to be true disciples of you? And would you help us to honor you in the world? And God, pray for the strengthening of your church specifically, that we would be people who lament and grieve the suffering that's in the world, but also that are just full of hope and faith and lead the way in trusting you and in unity, God, that we wouldn't be polarized and separated depending on our views of what's happening or what should happen, but that we'd be unified as a body in you. And God, thanks for Drew. Thanks for the friend that he is. Thanks for him leading our church in repentance and being a learner. And I'm learning and growing from watching the way that he lives life, and am thankful for him. And God, you always do this. You bring good things out of really hard things. And I've watched you do it again. And so we praise you, God. You've been really, really good to us. And we don't deserve it, but we're thankful for it. So yeah, Lord, we love you. Amen.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Salt City Church podcast. Hope to see you guys again next week, and may God's grace be with you this week.